Well, the first thing, one sec. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the twist, because like the whole twist ending. What I liked about it was, like, it made sense. It wasn't just a twist out of nowhere that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You could definitely tell they're planning it the whole time,
Yeah.
and everyone was caught up in, like, oh, it's in another dimension, what kind of crazy kooky stuff's gonna happen here.
Hmm.
But it was always just a story about Elliot
Yeah.
and, like, his messed up mind.
Uh, one thing, one thing that I wasn't sure about the twist ending was, so you know how like the very last scene after real Elliot wakes up, that we've never seen before, and hit, one thing I noticed was his eye color was different. Uh, I think, let me look it up. I think Rami Malek has like black eyes, pretty sure, right? Doesn't he? Yeah, he does.
Not sure. His eye color was different.
Yeah, he does. Oh wait, no, no, okay, it wasn't. So that answers my question. He has blue eyes. Um, yeah, because what I was thinking is when you only see real Elliot's eye when he wakes up at the end, I was like, okay, well that doesn't really explain the real Elliot that we saw in the sort of dream world, because I was like, I guess, I mean, it's all kind of redundant because I guess real Elliot does look like Mr. Robot Elliot, Hacker Elliot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I was kind of confused about that, but makes sense now.
Yeah.
Um,
I like how we got to see, like, what the real Elliot would look like. We just thought he was like this perfect Elliot in this perfect world
mm,
when we first saw him,
mm,
but then we find out that, like, that's Elliot. That's what Elliot could be if he just got over, like, his social anxiety and stuff,
mm.
which is really nice. It ended on a good note, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the whole show started out as kind of like it started out as kind of just like a show that was made for the, I don't know, I guess hacker crowd, but or just, I don't know, people who like smart cinema, I guess, because TV is the modern cinema now. Like, it was kind of a show that was made for people who like smart cinema and like for people who are into computers and stuff like that. But then it ended on like such a different note from where it started, to where it's like so inspirational. It's like it ended on just being who you are and fighting for change in the world to make it a better place, no matter how small it is. No matter how
Mm-hmm.
small your steps that you're taking are. Um, and I
Yeah.
just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it started as, like, a show, like, against, it started saying, like, all the things that are wrong with society.
Hmm.
And then at the end, he has the whole monologue about, like, things to change in yourself. Like, it kind of came around. It wasn't what was wrong with his society, it was the way he saw it.
Yeah.
And if he just viewed it in a more positive light, he could just make the best of what he had.
Hmm.
And if everyone did that, then maybe society wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah. Um, I think the most the thing that I liked the most, or really at the in the last two episodes, was I thought the twist where you find out that the Elliot that we've been watching for the whole show isn't even the real Elliot. I thought that was so awesome because he's still technically the main character of the show. He's been like Hacker Elliot has been the main character of the show from the beginning, pretty much until the end. Uh, Apart from like the last scene, I guess, of the last episode. But I thought that was so cool that like we were watching we were watching our main character, who in turn just ended up being a side character at the end, in like a really creative way where it made sense, and it wasn't just like, it didn't feel like it was a twist to be a twist, for the sake of it. It ended up being a twist that made sense because the whole show is him dealing with his different personalities, and then you find out that the personality that we've been seeing isn't even the real personality at the end. I just thought that was so awesome.
Hmm. I never really dwelled into, like, the fan theories
Mm-hmm.
about the show, but it seemed like no one was really focusing on, like, how it was going to end with his, like, mental state.
Mm-hmm.
We've been, like, I never saw a theory that it was, like, a different personality, which it seems so obvious now. Like, of course, like, every time Elliot has, like, a lapse in his memory, or he doesn't remember things and he kind of freaks out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like they were just trying to say, like this isn't the real him.
Yeah.
Like this is just part of him, especially since he has so many personalities.
Yeah. I mean,
But I never heard anyone say a theory like that.
it had been. It's one of those things where it is a good twist, because a good twist, even if you don't see it coming, you can always apply the twist to everything that you've seen in the past and be like, okay, there was stuff here that pointed to it, you know, whether I saw it or not. But yeah, it makes sense where like, the you know, you tie his sort of hacker personality, I guess Black Hoodie Elliot, you can tie that to his lapses in memory, where it was the real Elliot taking over. Again, which for me kind of all ties back to just, it was so cool how it's all from Black Hoodie Elliot's point of view, where he comes back from these lapses in judgment and in memory, and he's kind of thinking like, oh, what happened? I don't remember any of that, when in reality it was the real Elliot taking over, which is why Black Hoodie Elliot had lapses in memory, but you just think that it's lapses in memory from technically the main character the whole time, when he's really
You just think
not.
he's crazy.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, in the first season, I didn't really remember it, but everyone in the first season was like, you're acting weird, Elliot, what's going on? And like his anger issues were coming back. The therapist said he was doing better, but then she started saying like he's getting angry again. And that's cool. That's just his personality that's angry at the world and wants to just defeat evil. And that kind of turns this personality of Elliot's, it's not just another personality, it's like a superhero,
Yeah.
where he just defeats all evil in the world. And it's not really because he loves the world, he hates the world, he doesn't care if it burns.
Yeah.
But he's doing it for Elliot in the end, so that when he finally comes out of being dormant, like he has a not shitty world.
Yeah, he was. It is cool how he's just doing it all for real Elliot, without even
But at the
without
end,
even knowing about it.
like, yeah, his personality starts to change though. Like his mastermind personality, it starts to change because he starts to like the world. He starts to not feel all this anger. And I noticed that the last few, because they really emphasized that he was angry this season. Like, he had a lot more outbreaks. And, like, I was like, why is he so angry this season? But they're really just trying to show how angry he was. And then the last few episodes, he starts to, like, chill out and calm down. And I'm like, oh, Elliot's going to, like, not be so angry anymore. He's going to feel, like, a sense of relief after everything he's done. But now I know it was just this different personality. The true Elliot, it was that side of him coming out and getting ready to like come out of being dormant.
Yeah, it was also because Black Hoodie Elliot, with all his rage, I mean, his sort of MO is, without him knowing it, at least up until the very end, creating a better world for real Elliot. But it's pretty much at the expense of everyone he knows. Like his girlfriend dies, his relationship with his sister is getting worse, but it's almost like his innate desire is to just make the world a better place, but he doesn't know why. And that's the whole thing when he has all those conflicts with Mr. Robot, where it really starts to make sense in the last season and before, but it's always like he has some next step to go. He can never take down one organization or stop one attack, and that's never enough, and you don't know why. You just think, oh, because he's a good person. But then they also start to do things where he drugs the lady he had a one night stand with, the chick he had a one night stand with, and it's like, okay, so he's not really a good person, really, because he'll manipulate anyone to get what he wants. But so then why does he continue to try and do these things when he just, his only motivation that we know at certain points is that he just has to, like, you don't know why. But then again, it all just comes around in the end. And I think that's why this is, like, honestly one of the smartest and most, like, fulfilling shows that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I've never seen a show that has so much to say about, like, an inner conflict and, like, the exterior conflict that he has with the world. Like, they both tie into each other, and thematically they're, like, one and the same.
Yeah.
how he's just fighting himself, but he's also fighting the world. He's just taking on everybody.
Hmm.
That's why I really like that side of him. I really like the character of Elliot. How he's just like this superhero at this point, especially in this season.
Yeah. I also I think the casting, it was so good. Like, this show kind of made Rami Malek's career, but everyone else is like so top notch, and there's a lot of like really dark parts in this show as a whole where like Rami Malek, his performance like definitely shined. Like, I forget what season, I think it was season 2, where they're breaking into that one big like data place. I forget what it was called. It had some name.
Steel Mountain,
Yeah,
Stone Mountain.
Stone, something like that. But they're trying to break into it, and he's with the two other guys from F Society. And you remember where he wakes up in the bed, and he's like going through morphine withdrawals and shit. Like, that was such like a powerful performance in that moment. But like everyone else in the cast just shines. Like, Christian Slater is so good at being crazy, I guess, and so is Rami Malek. Like, they have a good uh, dichotomy there, where like they're both kind of crazy, and at points they're working with each other. Like, the beginning of season 2 was such a trip when he's like in jail the whole time, but you don't figure out until later. And like Joey Badass is really good, and Carly Carly Chaikin, I think her name is, the sister Darlene. Um, and then I don't know Angela's real name, but like everyone is just so good. It's just such a well casted show. Everyone's performances are really great, and that really definitely
Everything,
helps carry it.
yeah, everything was great about the show.
Yeah.
Just like the music that I listen to when I'm feeling extra edgy,
Yeah.
and like just the shots. I love how they really wanted to just play around and have fun with it. Like, it looked like such a fun show to film,
Yeah, I was
because every episode they would like change it up and try something new.
especially in the fourth season. I was gonna bring that up. There's been, in the past few years, with how monopolized like the feature film industry is becoming with Disney and everything. You're really starting to see TV take over what film used to be. Like 50, 60 years ago, when you had movies like like the beginning of Martin Scorsese's career, and you had films like Taxi Driver coming out that were really creative, and it was first and foremost a piece of art before it was something just to make money. And now you're seeing that with TV, where there was the episode in season 4 where him and Darlene go on that basically episode long hack, and there's pretty much no dialogue in the entire show. There's like, or in the entire episode, there's like a few lines of dialogue, but mainly it's just the tension building of them trying to hide from the security guards, and uh, Elliot running from the police. And then there's the episode with what's his name, the drug dealer who wants to take over the world, where it's like a 5-act structure. There's just so much creative stuff in this show, and that's because you would never see something like Mr. Robot be a movie, because no one would greenlight it, because it's not an established IP already.
Yeah, which are about the only movies getting greenlit anymore.
Yeah.
Because they know it's gonna make money.
Hmm.
Which I guess shows that it's not just to make. It's not all about making money. At least for TV.
Yeah.
That's why I like. I like that it's just a piece of art. Like, someone really cares about it, and we see that way less than we should. Like, we
For
should
sure.
see people caring about what they're making.
Yeah.
Like, they should be taking liberties and having fun with it. Just saying, I'm gonna make the best score possible. Just make these crazy shots.
Yeah,
Beautiful
experiment
shots.
with the cinematography and the storytelling, for sure. I mean, like, you have to give, for as serialized as it is, you have to give like Marvel some props, because at least those are like expertly created movies. They have their gripes of being very like almost formulaic to a T, but at least you can see their overarching ideas in it and stuff. But other than that, like, they're the only, like, just Marvel specifically, not even Disney, because the rest of Disney just puts out so much shit, so much regurgitated
Oh,
shit. Um,
they too. Oh my god.
But
Fucking Star Wars. Star Wars just follows a formula anymore.
yeah,
Like they kind of try new things with like the spin-off movies, Rogue One,
yeah,
which I'm proud of them for doing that. At least they're trying to do something new. But the main story movies are just all the same.
it's kind of sad because I remember watching Star Wars movies growing up, but like at this point for me, Star Wars is just more like eye candy. It's almost like a good time waster because there's cool effects and stuff, but there's always so much problems, and they rely too much on the old characters. I I don't know if they made a statement or not, but I think they're planning with the next like trilogy that they're gonna make is they're gonna be done with the Skywalker family, so it's just gonna jump to a completely different like place in the Star Wars universe, which is good because I think that they're relying too much on the old two trilogies. But
Which I guess they could just be thinking like in the long term if they wanted to just have a transitional 3 movies just to like wrap up the Star Wars or the Skywalker storyline and then have that transition into like the new characters. And then the next trilogy they're going to be it's just going to be the new characters. But I don't really feel like they needed to do that because like the Skywalker storyline was pretty much wrapped up. You didn't have to go back to them.
mm-hmm.
I mean, like, of course, Luke's still alive and everything, but it just feels like, oh, they needed bad guys, so there's a new emperor, there's a new, like, empire that they had to fight, which is, like, even bigger than the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, they just did so many things that didn't make sense. Everything was just kind of pandering to the audiences that were just like, I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember.
member berries. But
Yeah, it was just full of member berries.
yeah, I mean, to to bring it all back though, like that's what I'm basically saying is you'll never see something like Mr. Robot. At least if modern cinema and feature films keep going in the direction they are, you'll never see something like Mr. Robot on the big screen apart from someone like Tarantino or like Denis Villeneuve or just big established directors who have enough fuck you money to studios to just say, I want you to pay for what I'm going to do, and if you're not going to pay for it, I'm going to take this big money making machine somewhere else. And so it's just so awesome to see the evolution of cinema kind of be handed over to TV as it's been dying, like the creative form of it is dying in modern cinema. And so I don't know, I'm just super excited to see what Sam Esmail does next because he's definitely proven that he is like a crazy smart director and he's able to plan out a vision for a project as big as a TV show and just push his idea from start to finish and make it really smart and in depth and creative and groundbreaking and everything else. I don't know. I'm just super excited to see what he does next. But Mr. Robot was like just fucking amazing.
I think he's in the works with something else. I think it's starring Rami Malek too.
Oh, really?
I think I heard something like that.
That would be cool.
But yeah, for film, it's either just established IPs or established directors. And the thing about the directors that make these amazing movies, everyone knows they're amazing directors. So tons of people will go see their movies even if they don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're kind of getting old now. Like, all the popular directors are well over their 50s at least. And we're not going to find, like, the next new, like, household name directors unless if studios just, like, take chances
Mm-hmm.
and just make movies. But what was that one movie with Robert Pattinson and...
Oh, it was recent,
what's his
wasn't it?
name?
It was
Yeah,
like that.
it was black and white, The Lighthouse or something.
Yeah. What's his fucking name? Yeah, it was. I think it was just.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I think it was just called The Lighthouse.
Yeah, was that, like, in theaters? That was, like, full-on in theaters?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was mainly. I think the only reason it made it into theaters was because it was produced by A24, and so
They make good movies.
yeah, they get involved in good projects. So that was probably enough for it to get put on the big screen. I don't know. I never saw that. I was excited to see it, and then I just never got out to see it. But yeah, there.
That's a movie that we could download.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of it's a good thing that a studio like A24 exists for sure, because they're in the same vein as big enough directors who can do their own projects. Um, I I'm already like a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve, but it's kind of cool that the uh, he's taking over like kind of a niche where um, instead of someone like Tarantino who will go to a studio to produce his movie, where it's all his idea. It's a completely brand new IP with basically the same actors that he's been using, or a lot of the same actors, but it's a completely new story and IP. But you can look at someone like Denis Villeneuve who like got the Blade Runner IP and now he's working on Dune, and it's kind of cool to see him with as big of a name in cinema that he has to kind of take on like established IPs and then do something creative with it. He's always going to do some mind fuck with it and make it creative and interesting more than just like next Star Wars, next Marvel movie that you've seen a million times at this point. So it's cool that we have people like him, but I think definitely moving forward, sort of high cinema, I guess, if I want to be up my own ass about it enough, or just creative cinema and art form version of cinema is just going to be mainlined in TV now because that's the only place it can exist, especially with Disney buying up everything, you know?
Yeah, they own so many things. They own Hulu, dude.
I know. It's crazy.
They have, even just in the streaming service, they own Hulu, and now they have Disney Plus, which is like crazy popular. It's super successful already, just because they have so many IPs that they can just say, hey, we own this, so
yeah,
if you want to watch it, you got to buy our streaming service.
Yeah.
But Robert Eggers.
Who's he?
He's he directed The Witch, which was an awesome movie.
With Harry Potter. What's his name?
No, he wasn't in that.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the Black something. I don't know.
Where he has horns. The horns.
I don't know who you're talking.
Oh no, the Black Woman or something.
Yeah, the scary movie with the guy from Harry Potter.
I never watched that. I saw parts.
I heard they were okay.
But he directed The Lighthouse too.
Oh, he did.
So, yeah, he might be worth like watching in the future.
Yeah, I definitely want to see 1917 as well. Mm-hmm. I had heard about it, I had just maybe seen like a trailer on YouTube, and I'm not huge on war movies, and then you told me about it, that it's like a one take movie, probably with some movie magic where they do some creative cuts and stuff. But like there are definitely still creative projects in cinema, but it's just so sad to see that the masses are hoarding towards stuff that's so safe and stuff that the studio knows it's going to make money, and the stuff that viewers know they feel safe going into it because it's something that they know they're going to like pretty much already. But I guess that's always happened, because movies like the original Blade Runner and movies like Taxi Driver weren't big in their time. They've just become cult classics. So I guess it's kind of always been that way. But the thing was back then when those movies were big, there was still so much creativity in as a whole in the cinema, in the in the industry.
Yeah, like I guess cult classics, they go on to become like big IPs they'll make. Well, I don't know if Blade Runner 2049 was really that popular when it came out.
No.
But like the original Blade Runner was a cult movie.
I think
had a cult following.
I want to say that the original Blade Runner like maybe broke even. I think it made some money. But the thing is that's so sad is that a movie just making random number like 60 million for a big studio, forget who produced it, but it was a big studio. Like that's not enough for them. They want every movie to make $1 billion, and that's just not going to happen, especially when you churn out shit that's so blatantly a money grab. It's like you have to take, that's how business works. You have to take a risk. You have to take a risk on an unknown IP that seems like it's going to be good, and if it's so good that word gets around and everyone goes and sees it, then it'll make money. You can't just churn out shit at least for the most part, and make money off of it. I mean, that's at least why the Marvel movies are like such a money maker, because they are so serialized and they do follow such a rigid formula, but they're definitely not shit. They're not just, fucking feeding like shit in the gutters to the masses. Like they're still well crafted movies and they still tell a good story and they have good actors and this and that and the next thing, but they're just not shit. And you see all these Warner Bros. The new like Harry Potter movies aren't great, as I've heard. So it's like no one's really understanding it besides Marvel. I mean, it's not a Disney as a whole thing, because their Star Wars movies aren't doing great. I mean, they probably make a lot of money, but they're not received well. And, so I don't know. I just find it sad. I miss the days where you'd go out and see a really, really good movie in theaters. You kind of those. It's just kind of few and far between now.
Yeah, I guess there doesn't seem to ever be like a good movie coming out at any different time. At any one time, there's just like a horror movie that looks okay. Like it just looks shitty, because most are. And then like a Marvel movie's out, some random movie, and then just like some remake of an IP. Like that's
Reboot,
what we
yeah.
got at any given time throughout the year, for movies. Like it doesn't. I mean, like once a year, there's like a good movie that comes out, and it looks really like new and groundbreaking. But for Blade Runner 2049, it looks like it made about 100 million,
Okay.
which I don't know if they'd call that a success. They'd probably want more out of it.
They probably want more, but I think there are talks of another Blade Runner movie being made.
Okay. Dope. Yeah, felt like something was missing here. Cool.
You want to head it off? You have more talking points.
Oh, I got so much shit to talk about, dude. The finale was chaotic.
In a good way. It was chaotic in a good way. I mean, there's like the I forget where I heard it, maybe Twitter or something, but there was like, I'm happy that Mr. Robot is ending before I want it to end rather than when I think it should end, you know? Like the story's all wrapped up and everything, but I feel like the last season or like the last two episodes or the very last episode, whatever, might always feel rushed and chaotic just because there's always going to be some stuff that maybe the showrunner or whoever's involved wanted to touch on, but they didn't have enough time to elaborate with, because if they have just a little bit more to do or that they feel like they missed, they're not going to they're not going to go and get a whole nother season of Mr. Robot greenlit just to touch on a few more things. But it's like, it's crazy to see. I mean, yes, Mr. Robot just on like not the depth of what it was dealing with, but like how much the show was dealing with is definitely a smaller scale than Game of Thrones. But you could look at the end of Game of Thrones and everything felt rushed and the ending wasn't even very good, versus like Mr. Robot, where the ending might feel a little rushed and chaotic, but it pretty much tied up every loose end and also made a super entertaining and fulfilling ending to the show,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this way everything's wrapped up in a nice little bow, nice little crimson colored bow.
Mm-hmm.
And the show was great. Everything was great about it. There's literally nothing you can say that's bad about it, at least that I can think of. And yeah, it just has a nice ending. It doesn't go on for too long. It's
Yeah.
a good little story. It's like a really long movie, the way that
Yeah.
it just starts off good and wraps
Yeah.
up.
And you can tell just the way that pretty much everything gets tied up in the end, that like that every new loose end that was I guess opened or started earlier in the show was there for a reason, because it was tied up in the end, you know. So it's not like there was stuff that felt like, oh, I wonder what happened with this. It's like they literally gave an end pretty much to every character in the show. They even had the mustache guy from season 3 or was it season 2? I forget. The guy who kills the DEA agent or the FBI agent
Hmm.
with the axe. Like they had him come back and like they tied him up and they're like, he's like, "Yep, Dark Army doesn't care about you anymore, so we're done with you." You know, like it was so funny to see him in the
Hey,
bookstore
read my
because
book.
yeah, because in the other season he's like talking about wanting to settle down and write a book someday, and it's like a funny thing, but it's also you've seen this guy fucking murder people with axes, and you've seen him be like a heartless bastard. So it's also super like unsettling to see him just in an airport selling his book, especially from Dom's point of view. I just thought that was such a like. There's just so many awesome endings for everyone. Uh, I don't know. I was just so happy with the end of Mr. Robot. Like it was sad, of course, because it's one of my favorite TV shows, but
Yeah,
I was happy with it.
yeah. It goes along. There's like good people and bad people. Well, everyone can be good and bad,
Hmm.
and there's like this totally likable guy. Everyone likes that guy, which I forget his name now too. But he's just chilling, and yeah, they wrapped him up all good.
Hmm.
God, that's so crazy.
What was
Um,
the?
yeah, Darlene.
What about her?
I
Or
just
and
like how they wrapped up Dom and Darlene. I
yeah, yeah,
like Dom is like all I want to stay, dude. You know, like
yeah.
I don't really want to take that risk. I gotta focus on my job. That's all what
Hmm.
she's about. She has no life.
Hmm.
She hops on the plane, and now she's gonna go on a little Dom adventure.
Yeah.
But Darlene realizes she doesn't need to run away anymore because that's
Hmm.
all she's done.
Yeah.
Like before, when she left Elliot because like she didn't want to be around that, she felt like she had to get away. Now she feels like she can stand on her own.
Hmm.
So she's here for him to stay. You know, she comes back to meet him in the hospital, and yeah, it's kind of the old switcheroo, but both people kind of wrapped up their characters in the best way at that moment. And I like
Yeah.
that they didn't like explain anything else with the two of them
Well,
because
yeah.
they're wrapped up pretty good.
Yeah. I was gonna say that with the way that their characters were left, especially with their relationship between Dom and Darlene, they didn't really need any other wrapping up. They were pretty good, but I just thought it was so funny and creative how they swapped them. How Darlene was on the plane, Dom was leaving, and then they swap. And it's like once you think about it, it's like yeah, that makes the most sense for what the character needs. They both want to stay comfortable where they know Dom wants to go back to work and Darlene wants to run. But then once Dom ends up on the plane and Darlene then ends up staying with Elliot, it's both what they needed. You know, just
Yeah, and
as a
like
person, as a character, I guess.
yeah, and Dom's on the plane and she's sleeping. That's the last shot we see of her. She's
Hmm.
like finally getting sleep. Like she's never said. She keeps saying she's never slept in
Yeah,
like
I didn't I
years.
didn't pick up on that, but that's a good point.
The chick in the bathroom's like saying to Darlene, "Do you need help? Do you need something? Do you need me to call someone for you?" She's like, "No." And I was like, "Oh fuck." That's why I
Yeah.
love like they do so many creative things where that they didn't have to, but they just do it.
Well, the thing that felt so right about Darlene finally realizing that she can take care of herself enough to the point where she can like even help take care of her brother and she doesn't feel the need to run and hide anymore. The thing that was so well paid off about that is because so many other stupid shows and movies want to just be like, I'm a powerful woman because I have a vagina, which is fine, whatever, if people like that. But it felt so good for Darlene because you see the whole show her struggling with just going with the flow and doing what other people are telling her, and then at the end of the show she finally becomes a strong character because she realizes it for herself, and there's been all the character progression through the show for her to come to this switch, where she changes and she realizes that she doesn't want to run anymore and she's able to do her own thing and take care of herself, which is
Hmm.
why it felt so well paid off.
And she
Uh,
kind of lost everyone she cared about and who was like taking care of her. She needed other people to be strong.
yeah.
And then she has her like little panic attack because she's going to be on her own finally.
Hmm.
And then like she realizes in that moment in the bathroom that she can stand on her own because she
Hmm.
thought Dom was staying and she was going to go on her own,
Hmm.
but she ended up just staying anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And it,
just and it's
yeah.
just all about her. It's almost a kind of endearing note as well because she realizes that um, her family is like has always, even with all the ups and downs that she had with Elliot across the show, she realizes that he's the only person that she's ever had such a strong connection with that's like went past everything else. And so she just realizes that she wants to stay in New York and help her brother because he's just been through how much of a dick he's been to her. Now the real Elliot's back and the world is in a good place, and she finally realizes that she can just chill with her brother and have a happy ending.
Hmm.
I thought it was really good.
And she can take care of her brother who may be more. They didn't really make it clear if like his personalities are kind of gonna go away. I don't think they. I think they will
Yeah, I think
because
I think they're taking a back seat, kind of.
since like I like how that was shot too. It really like showed the whole like it was like symbolistic
Hmm.
of what was going on. Like all of his personalities were sitting in a movie theater and they were like watching him. They
Yeah.
were just watching his movie, like they weren't in control. And
Hmm.
then the audience, who was just following this one personality this whole time, goes up into the projector, and that like goes to Elliot's eye, and
Yeah.
we're just watching him living his life without being controlled by his personalities.
Yeah. Um, I liked the uh, I liked the kind of homage type thing to 2001: Space Odyssey when you're like in the projector and the frames are kind of flowing beside you. That was cool, and then it was also kind of like a being John Malkovich uh, vibe when they're like sitting in the movie theater watching. But I think that was the idea of it, right? Is like finally the Elliot that we followed the whole show, Black Hoodie Elliot, is realizing that his work is done and he needs to give up. He like basically at that point, once he realizes what the point of that personality was, like the point of basically himself was to do all this stuff so that real Elliot could have a good life. He realizes that like he thinks he's the real Elliot, so he doesn't want to give up that power and control. But then once he realizes, oh, I was doing all this for real Elliot, so the last step in my journey is to take the back seat and finally just sit down and become dormant until maybe he's needed again or whatever. But he's not needed in that time. He's completed his goals as a character, so it's time for him to just sit back and let real Elliot take over in the kind of better world that he's created for him,
Hmm.
which was
It
cool.
really
Like,
was a happy ending.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
wasn't
for sure.
expecting that, honestly.
Yeah.
It is super positive because although we don't see what Elliot's like after the show ends, we do kind of get to see his life, like what it could be in
Mhm.
his like little fantasy world that he created,
Mhm.
where he's sociable, he's happy, he's nice to everyone he knows. He like shows them that he cares,
Mhm.
and they gave us that one little day where we just follow this Elliot, which at the time we thought he was just like the alternative perfect universe Elliot,
Mhm.
but really it was just the real Elliot.
Yeah.
And now we can kind of assume that once the cameras stop rolling, like that's who he's gonna be. He's gonna just like come out of his shell finally, and
Yeah.
that's a great way to end it.
Yeah. I also just thought like it was such a cool way to visually show like because you kind of think like at that point if you're to think about it in like sort of like if you're to like sort of theorize the ending, it's like okay, then text comes on the screen, the Elliot that we've been watching, his job is done, and now it's time for him to take a back seat. But it was so cool that they that Sam Esmail was able to just show that in like a purely visual way. Black Hoodie Elliot walks through the hallway to the movie theater, and as soon as he sits down, that's fully him, accepting that it's time for him to take a back seat. And it was just cool that they were able to find a way to visually show that instead of doing something like cheesy. Like in that moment, it's not cheesy because, or it doesn't feel out of place either, because it's like you're realizing that these are just his personalities, so it's just kind of a visualization of those personalities, so it makes sense. Like the movie theater and all of that isn't real, but for these different personalities that take over, they're sort of like, not to get really meta, but like they're sort of like cognizance is very real to them, so it makes sense that they all kind of sit down inside of a movie theater to watch real Elliot live his life now, you know?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
just further personification of his different personalities, which is
and
awesome.
it's cool because like they're always there. It's kind of like the back of his mind is this movie theater,
Hmm.
and they are always watching. They can see what he's seeing.
Hmm.
Like they're always going to be in the back of his mind. He's always going to know they're there, and they're also always going to be there. They're just not in control.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a really good way to show it.
Uh, what did you think of? Man, I forget her name. I want to say it was like Rachel, but I know it wasn't that. I'm gonna look it up. What do you think of the Dark Army plant? That's sort of like Dom's boss in the Dark Army. She was so freaky in like a good way, but in like a super unsettling way. Just the way that she makes her little phone calls to Dom, and like, oh, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna murder your whole family, while she's just like, working at her taxidermy job. You know,
I fucking hate her,
I
but
hated her
also
too, but in a good way. Like like she was such a well written character and like such a well acted character.
yeah, like when they were in what's her name, Angela. When they were in Angela's apartment, and she's just like, she's giving her a little monologue basically about her, like, oh, they found out when I was a child, they thought something was wrong with me, but it turns out I'm completely normal.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, she's just a normal person. And that's what makes the Dark Army so scary. Like,
Hmm.
I think the Dark Army as like an antagonistic force
Hmm.
in this story is like top notch
Yeah.
because like they're just like they're more scary than any monster in any scary movie because they're right there. They're like everywhere and they're just so threatening because they'll literally do anything. They own the the government pretty much and like the cops, but they're also just so good with tech so they could basically just control any cameras. They can make you just disappear,
Yeah.
and they also just take over people's lives. That's why I really liked seeing Dom. Like we got to really see how the Dark Army just controls people to where
Hmm.
Dom's doing these things she would never do.
Yeah.
And she's like really idealistic, she really cares about what she does for the FBI.
Yeah.
And she cares about people, but like even she would just almost kill Darlene, someone she cared about because they're just threatening her family. They're just
Hmm.
always there. Just a lingering force.
Yeah.
Super spooky, but yeah, her. I think that's mostly like what we are supposed to get from her. It's just like she's just a normal person, and Dom just kind of met her out of nowhere, and she was like really close with her mom.
Hmm.
She's always there. It's like just watching her
Janice. That's who it is.
being
Janice.
a little cunt. Fuck Janice.
Yeah, like, no, I agree with you, but like that, the scene where, you remember the scene where Dom is supposed to kill Darlene, and then I think it ends with Janice walking in on the one episode, and then the next episode it takes a little bit, which was like good on the editing part. It ends the one season where you see Janice and the two Dark Army guys walk in, and then you expect the next episode to pick up right from there, but I think it waits till maybe like halfway through the next episode, and you're just like, you're watching the stuff and you're paying attention to what's happening so far in the next episode, but you're like, I just want to get back to Dom and Darlene and like see what happens with them. And it's just uh, Janice walks in and she sees Darlene with the gun and she's like, "Oh, that's not good." It's just so funny because she's a person who's willing to do anything, like hurt anyone, do anything, but she's just so like content with it, you know, and it's such an interesting like dichotomy of her two different lives where she's fine with just murdering people like entire families in cold blood, but she's just so like upbeat and snappy about it, you know, and just like happy kind of in a weird way.
Mm. She just loves what she does. She's just like she's like an elementary school teacher,
Yeah.
but she's yeah, just killing people.
I mean, I think she kind of just serves the purpose of like kind of the Dark Army will always kind of get what they want, at least in controlling people in certain ways, just because they have, I mean, they're obviously like paying her, and maybe they have some type of like, uh, maybe they have some type of collateral on her, but she's just come to this realization where she's always going to do what the Dark Army tells her, so she doesn't even have, like, maybe they're threatening to kill her family as well if she doesn't follow orders, but she's just become content with it. You know, she always knows that she's going to do what they tell her to do, so she just has like found some weird happiness in it. I like
Hmm.
I hated her too for the like the purpose she played in the show, but I just loved her character. She was just like so interesting.
Yeah, they just control with like force, so that's probably
Mm.
how she's being controlled. And they're like, you know, the Dark Army. They're an army. They can be anywhere
Yeah.
at any time. Especially, I love like just like how we see them in the show. They're on these like bikes, and you know, full black. You never see their faces,
Mhm.
so they can be anyone. Also, they can just be
Mhm.
like the normal people. But then they just have the, you know, the gunmen who just show up wherever they're needed, wherever they're summoned, and they'll
Yeah.
just do anything, or
Yeah.
even kill themselves if
Yeah.
they need to.
Which was did you ever did you I mean they kind of brought it to a head in episode was there 14 episodes? Yeah, 13 and 14 were the part 1 and part 2 finale. Um it finally is revealed that White Rose's machine is sort of, you know, like a gateway to a parallel universe. So it makes sense that all the Dark Army soldiers are willing to just kill themselves and kill whoever because they believe that it's gonna all, you know, be roses and sunshine in the end. Um, but like that sort of explains that aspect because you wonder why these people are just so willing to kill themselves, uh, you know, as an extent of not being caught by the police or the government, whatever. But I just thought that was interesting too, sort of how the Dark Army almost like the way that the Dark Army was set up in the show was they were almost more of like a force. You know, it wasn't. They were more of like an idea than an actual army of people. You know, because like what you were saying, they can be anyone and be anywhere at any time to do anything that's needed of them. They almost feel like a force and more of like a non-physical thing. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's different from like a normal army where they're very upfront about where they are, their positions. You know, they show force by like sheer numbers. The
Mhm.
Dark Army has that, but they're more covert about it,
Mhm.
and like they're still large, but they fight their wars, you know, in the shadows, and you know they just kill silently. They frame people. They try to
Mhm.
like, which is kind of how a smart way to fight wars in this world where like everything's monitored and yeah,
Everything's controlled by tech nowadays. You know. Like
yeah.
it makes sense for that. Um, yeah, I just like to sort of elaborate, I guess, a little more on my point is like it's just so interesting how in most movies or TV shows, especially one, you know, a sort of uh, show that has like a specific protagonist and antagonist. Like White Rose definitely becomes an antagonist. Um, you know, probably in somewhere in season 2 and into the rest of the show. But it's almost sort of like the Dark Army is the main antagonist, and then you just have White Rose who is controlling them, but she's not really the main part because she doesn't do any of the bidding. She has everyone else follow her orders, and so you know you mainly like in a superhero movie or whatever, there's always the bad guy who is directly fighting against the protagonist, but you have and they're always like a physical thing, but then you have the Dark Army, which is basically just like the force of control is all they are, which is like why I'm saying they're more of like an idea, which is it's just another like thing that's just so creative about this show, and you don't see a lot in really anything else.
It's just like a well-written villain,
Mm-hmm.
How you definitely humanize with them because, like what you were saying, we can assume they all believe like they're just going to be resurrected, and they believe in the cause that White Rose has, but also White Rose herself, because she kind of had the only thing she wanted taken away from her when her lover just killed himself.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Well, it was because he wanted White Rose to take the certain job, and she didn't. He wanted her to take the job in America so that they could move there and, be open with their relationship, but she took a different job that was still based in China, and so he killed himself at his wedding. But it also makes sense why the Dark Army is created almost as a force, because by the end of probably like the end of season 3, like just going into season 4, as much as Elliot starts having more problems dealing with like trying to understand what's going wrong with him, and he's having all these lapses in judgment and memory and stuff, like he's such a powerful character in the show. Like he could, if it was just White Rose without the force of the Dark Army, like he could do anything to take her down. She's based in China. He could just out her as being, transgender or whatever, and then that would kill her career and everything. So it's like you kind of have to have White Rose be the driving force of the Dark Army, but then have the Dark Army be the actual idea that's fighting against Elliot, because he's so powerful. He's such a powerful, to sort of pick him out of the show and his character in the show. It's like at that point, he's just such a powerful character. He can almost do anything,
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have something like the Dark Army that can directly combat him, because if it's just one person, that's no issue for him,
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Like he fights his battles like in the darkness. Like he takes people down by
exposing
them, hacking them, like
yeah.
getting the upper hand, not like straight up for face value, like fighting,
Mm-hmm.
but like underground, and that's what the Dark Army does also.
Yeah, like he needs
so it makes
to
sense
have,
that they would be the main like villains.
Yeah, like you need to have, because it's from the very first scene of the very first episode, it shows how he deals with people that he needs to take out. He finds their thing that's, not accepted by society or by the law, and then he outs them for it, turns them in. And so when you have a force like the Dark Army that are all nobodies, but also sort of everybody, and they're not afraid to die, clearly, because they kill themselves all the time, and they'll do anything to get what they want. That's like a perfect foil to Elliot, because how can he take down people who he doesn't know who they are, and they don't care if they get arrested, they'll just kill themselves, So that's
Mm-hmm.
it's just another really creative thinking outside the box thing that this show does.
And it's super cool too, because the Dark Army is kind of just a private army of only one of the most powerful people in the world. Like only one member of the Deus group,
Mm-hmm.
Which I liked when they were in that hall and like you just see the back of Donald Trump's head, like he's in this group.
I was wondering
hilarious.
how they were going to do that.
You figured he was in the group?
Yeah, because it's supposed to be every like powerful person, and if they're heading this meeting in New York City in the States, how is the president not gonna know that all these other powerful people are coming, on like Christmas Day, I think it was, and visiting, you know. So I was like, he has to be in it, and I wonder how they're gonna do it. So obviously they can just have whoever play like other powerful leaders because not it's an American-based show or like a westernized-based show. So like everyone knows who Donald Trump is, so they can't show his face because obviously he's not gonna pull a Home Alone 2 and make make a
You don't
cameo
think
in it.
he would play himself in the show?
I'm sure he
Maybe
would
he's a big
love
fan.
to, as long as Sam agrees to write him as like Donald Trump just comes over and saves the show, kills White Rose.
He's like the superhero. He just takes over the show in fourth season.
They just CGI him to have like a ripped body.
But yeah, like Minister Zhang or however he like shows himself when he's just a regular guy when he's not White
Mm-hmm.
Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like he's just part of the Deus group. He's just one member of it, and he has this army that can literally like control everything. Like they're just
Yeah.
unstoppable, and that's like
Mm-hmm.
even shows the scale of just like how big and corrupt this big world, this fictional world of Mr. Robot is. I thought that was like really cool.
Yeah.
And also, oh yeah, they never really say like of course everyone knows cuz they look the same, like you can tell. But if like they had a different actor playing White Rose, like the whole story would kind of work cuz they
Mm-hmm.
never outright say that they're the same person.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing even implying that.
Well,
There's just White Rose is a character, and then also Miniature Zhang.
yeah. I think you find out at the end of season 2. Like I forget what episode it is, but there's the episode where Minister Zong is having all the people over at his house and Dom is there and he shows Dom his mother's dress, which she ends up wearing at the end of season 4 when she gets taken out by the Dark Army. Not taken out, but she gets escorted from her house by them.
Mm-hmm.
Which I also thought was like another cool small twist where I think it was the big. No, it wouldn't have been the beginning of
It was the beginning of
episode 13.
12. No,
What?
of the finale, yeah.
Yeah, because she gets escorted out, but in the trailer, I watched like the trailer for episode 13, and you can hear the SWAT team like breaking into her house and trying to capture her, and you hear all the gunfire going off, and you think it's the Dark Army fighting the SWAT team that's raiding her house. But then once they come up to the door and escort her out, you find out that there was obviously just Dark Army plants inside the SWAT team. So they bust into the house and then kill um, all the actual SWAT guys, and then she gets escorted out by Dark Army people who are, they were part of the SWAT team, which I thought was so cool.
I don't know if they were a part of that SWAT team though. They were dressed differently. I just think
Oh, were they?
yeah, they were like wearing all black,
Okay.
which is kind of cool. Like that's the Dark Army. That's like how they can change if the situation needs them. Like their full combat gear, and at that point, it's like a scene out of Star Wars where she's just like the powerful figure, and she has like this like evil army just protecting her. It's such a cool, just like the themes in it, and
Yeah.
just the visuals of it. It's so cool that she just has like this dark army of like you don't know who they are. They don't have any like symbols or any like emblems on their armor or anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like her guards.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking cool. And yeah, well, like yeah, because you assume like the SWAT team's like raiding her house, like shooting the Dark Army,
Yeah.
but actually the Dark Army just took on a SWAT team.
Yeah.
And that's like holy shit. That's cool.
And also,
FBI SWAT team too.
yeah, just kind of breaking off from what we were talking about, it wouldn't be a season of Mr. Robot without Hazmat Suit Hamburger Guy. It was so awesome when he comes back at the end. Remember when
Oh yeah,
I think
yeah.
it was like in episode 13 when uh, Elliot walks into the nuclear power plant and he's walking around and then he realizes that the cops are coming to try and stop the nuclear meltdown, I think it was. And he turns around and it was like I think the elevator opens up and the hazmat hamburger guy's there and he's like, "You don't belong here." And then they escort him to White Rose and that's when he has the meeting with her.
Yeah.
I thought
I'm
that was
just
so
like,
funny.
why is he always eating? Like it's his fucking.
He just never gives a fuck.
He's just always eating a fucking cheeseburger.
He's so awesome.
What a
Um,
fucking god, dude. What a legend.